Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this very last session of the track 3 on challenging inclusiveness and environmental sustainability in entrepreneurship promotion. My name is Elisa Mandelli. I'm a technical officer on inclusive markets at the International Labour Organization in Geneva, and I will be your facilitator for today's session. Presenting today their solutions, we have two speakers. First, we have Nadia Nutz, technical officer on the approach to inclusive markets, AIMS, at the International Labour Organization in Lebanon. And Nadia has worked extensively on value chain development, entrepreneurship promotion, and she's currently coordinating a market system development project in Lebanon in the broader framework of a multiple actor partnership called Prospect. The aims is developing the horticulture value chain to increase productivity and improve working conditions for both Lebanese host communities and Syrian refugees. And today we will hear from her a bit more about this project and the solution that she has found there. The second speaker is Floortje Jacobs, country manager at Myanmar in Fresh Studio. Fresh Studio is a leading agricultural consultancy company based in South Asia. And Floortje has gained experience in agricultural value chain development in several countries, also thanks for her work with the Dutch NGO SMV. At Fresh Studio, she's currently managing the Myanmar office, which is implementing a wide scope of projects in the agriculture and aquaculture sector of Myanmar, serving a wide scope of clients, including private sector companies, farmers, government, and others. And also from her, we will know a bit better about these activities from Fresh Studios and also the solutions that they have developed thanks to this experience. And finally, joining us today as a discussant to comment a bit the work of Nadia and Floortje and their presentation and their solutions, we have Nema Malowa, Regional Refugees Coordinator Assistant at the Bureau of Population, Refugees and Migration of the US State Department in Uganda. She has several years of experience in the humanitarian assistance, refugee support, and the settlement space. She is currently providing technical advice and operational support to the Bureau-funded NGOs, implementing entrepreneurship and livelihood training programs for refugees, refugee-hosted community in the Great Lakes region. So a great panel today, and I'm also glad to see it's our only women panel, so cheers to that. So we'll hear an interesting presentation from Nadia and Floortje. And then after Nima comments and insight, I will open the floor for a discussion with the participant today. But please feel free to already share your comments, insight, questions in the chat box. We will collect them and ask them at the end. And before giving the floor to Nadia for the first solution, I just wanted to say a few words on the reason why we decided to merge together these two presentations in the same panel. Because as you know, the focus of this panel is on agribusiness. We know there is a strong focus and drive in the development world on the agribusiness sector in terms of its potential to provide employment, poverty alleviation. It's important for security, food security, and broader economic benefits of all those excluded and marginalized groups such as youth, women, refugees, and others. But we felt that while this is like a widely known focus and claimed by so many actors and government, development partners, etc., few is said on how concretely those groups can be better included into this agribusiness sector. What are the emerging trends? What are the emerging opportunities? And how we can better support them to grasp the opportunity that are emerging there. Which one is the sector that works better for which group in which context? Is it more important to look at production in a context and maybe in another opportunity lies more into transformation or services to agribusiness? And also how we can better guide those groups to identify where the opportunity is, what is the market demand that is emerging from this agribusiness sector. So we felt that both Nadia and Floortje are providing like some kind of responses or at least experience on how to do that. And so we decided to put them together and kind of compare their solutions into the inclusion, better inclusion in the agribusiness sector. So that's for a bit the framework, and without further ado, I will give the word to Nadia for a presentation. You have 15 minutes.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Let me share my screen now. The presentation. Can you see that now?
You just have to put the presentation mode.
Yeah, there we go.
Yes.
Yes, excellent. Well, thank you very much for having me here. I'm very excited, really, that my project was picked as one of the solutions to be presented here. As Elisa already mentioned, I'll be talking to you about promoting inclusive growth and job creation in Lebanon's horticultural sector. So the title gives it away. That's a sectoral approach to small enterprise and entrepreneurship promotion. We're doing that as part of, so this is what we're doing here is a component in a bigger program that is called Prospects, Partnership for Improving Prospects for Forcibly Displaced Persons and Host Communities. So the idea here is to promote livelihoods of refugees and host communities. Before I tell you a little bit more about the project, let me talk to you a little bit about the context here in Lebanon, because it is a special one. Lebanon still hosts about approximately 1.5 million Syrian refugees. And as I mentioned, the program that I'm working in is really focused on promoting entrepreneurship and small enterprises with the ultimate goal of creating jobs for both Syrian refugees and Lebanese host communities. However, the legal environment here in Lebanon is very restrictive. And so Syrian refugees are actually only allowed to work in 3 sectors. That's domestic work, agriculture, and construction. And what is more, projects like ours are actually not allowed to promote livelihoods of Syrians directly, because the government would rather have them go back to Syria at some point, and so we wouldn't be allowed to give them training or any kind of direct services for Syrian refugees. Hence, the sectoral approach, where we're hoping to promote sectors where they can find employment in order to increase the quantity and quality of opportunities that are available to them. And so that's the legal environment, but if that's not only difficult enough, we're dealing, unfortunately, with a massive financial and economic crisis here in Lebanon. So we started the project in 2019, and that coincided with the start of the crisis here in Lebanon. And it's really hard to explain the magnitude of the crisis. The state has gone bankrupt, so already weak services are now non-existent. There's a lack of electricity, there's a lack of fuel. Banks have gone bankrupt, and they have frozen the accounts of Lebanese, so they can't liberally withdraw their money. All of this obviously has threatened jobs. The Lebanese currency here has devaluated by about over 95% now. So businesses have gone broke, shops have closed, people leave the country. And so we're looking at a massive threat to jobs here. And as you can imagine, in this situation, the already a bit tense relationship between Syrians and Lebanese has intensified. So as these both communities are competing for resources and jobs, tensions have been on the rise. So in this situation, what do we do to promote jobs for Syrians and Lebanese? Well, we started looking at the agricultural sector is one of the sectors where Syrians have traditionally found employment as workers. So what's happening is that farms typically are owned by Lebanese persons, such as this farmer here, but over 90% of the workers, specifically on greenhouse farms, over 90% of the workers are actually Syrian, and 70 to 80% of them are women. So this is kind of like the lady you see here in front of the greenhouse, a Syrian worker. And so we thought, The objective here of the project would really be to support greenhouse farms as an entity and to help them produce more, grow and expand to really create jobs that can be picked up by Syrians, create jobs that would benefit both communities. Yeah, so that was the objective of the project. However, the problem that we faced here is that the crisis has severely affected agriculture as any other sector and is currently really threatening the jobs of both the farmers and workers. So what has happened is that due to the devaluation of the Lebanese currency, the inputs that are required for agricultural production, such as seeds, fertilizers, etc., equipment, they're all imported and they have massively increased in price. So that has led to production costs that have skyrocketed, and purchasing power, on the other hand, has led to decreasing demand. So therefore, profits have decreased massively. So what you see here is the result. We did a survey actually of 200 farmers, and we asked them, and they reported average production cost increase of about 117%, profits that have already been small to start with have decreased massively. And so as you can imagine, these farms, if they don't stop producing, which we've seen, some of the farmers have abandoned the farms. They're only cultivating part of their land because they're not able to afford the inputs. So that also means that they don't need workers anymore. So this whole situation is really threatening the jobs of both the farmers and the workers. And so while we started out in the beginning of the project hoping to create new jobs for all these communities, right now it is really just about maintaining these jobs, trying to save those jobs that are threatened by the crisis. Now the question is, how do we do that? For us, the solution really needs to lie in the long run in an increase of productivity on these farms. Because they're not profitable. So increasing productivity would help farmers make higher profits, gain higher incomes, and then ultimately, hopefully, that should trickle down also to the workers that are currently having a salary that has not been adjusted to the inflation. So they're currently earning most of them earn less than $2 a day. So ultimately, also, it is necessary to increase profitability through productivity increases on the farms to enable farmers to pay workers higher wages. So that's the goal of the project right now. We're trying to increase productivity on these farms. Now, how do we do that? We know that productivity has always been low in the sector for a variety of reasons, really. It's that farmers don't always know how to correctly use the inputs. They don't always use the right ones. They might not know about production practices for higher productivity. They might use inferior technology that limits productivity. So there's actually different things that we're working on. What I'm gonna talk to you today is about greenhouses, because one of the things that really limits productivity on farms is the greenhouses that they use. Currently, greenhouses in Lebanon mostly look like this. They're very basic structures. Plastic spans over these wooden structures, but that give for very low productivity. We know that there are other structures out there on the Lebanese market that look like this, called them multi-span greenhouses, and experts agree that they give for much higher productivity. And so the first thing that we did is we launched a pilot trial. We selected farmers in different regions. We upgraded one of their greenhouses to these nice multi-span greenhouses. And for the last year, we have been collecting data on yields, on production costs, and ultimately on revenues and incomes of these farmers in the traditional greenhouses and comparatively in the modern greenhouse. And so we've just completed these trials, and the results have been quite nice. So we were able to confirm that using such a modern greenhouse, multi-span greenhouses, leads to massive productivity gains. So if we look only at yield per square meter in these greenhouses, productivity gains averaged 54%, with large fluctuations, but still quite good average. What is more, the quality and the size of the crops in these new greenhouses are actually much improved. So you see here, Milad, this is one of the farmers that participated in the trial, proudly showing his big tomatoes in the modern greenhouses, for which he can get higher prices on the market as well. There's also the possibility to better use space. I'm not going to go into detail, but all of this led to revenue increases of 87%. So that's quite nice. We also interviewed the workers because we wanted to know how do they feel working in these new greenhouses, and the majority of these workers have confirmed to us that there's lower heat in those modern greenhouses. There's better ventilation, which also means that they're less exposed to the harmful pesticides that they spray. There's other benefits as well, such as fewer insects, more space. So overall, it's just a nicer environment to work in, which we were hoping would be one of the effects as well, that it positively affects the working conditions for workers in these greenhouses. I want to be very honest and clear. I don't think that working conditions right now is the primary concern of workers. When we've had responses like that when we interviewed them, when people basically told us, look, I'm earning less than $2 a day. I don't know how to feed my kids tomorrow, and you're talking to me about heat in the greenhouses. So it's not the primary concern. I feel that the main benefit of what we're trying to do here is saving their jobs, right? As mentioned, some farmers have abandoned their farms because it's not profitable anymore. Some farmers are only cultivating half of the land, which means they don't need workers as well. So what we're really trying to do here is save their jobs. But it's nice to see that it also has some positive benefits on working conditions. There's also some environmental benefits because in these modern greenhouses, you have to use less water. They better protect from pests, which means you have to spray less pesticides. So the environmental benefits are also there. Now, taking a step back again, if we know these greenhouses lead to higher productivity, basically that's one of the solutions, well, then why are farmers not upgrading to these better greenhouses? Well, one of the problems is that farmers don't actually know. They don't receive information about these greenhouses. So again, in the survey that we did, asking 200 farmers, it became clear that the vast majority of them don't receive information about the benefits of these upgraded structures. And even if they do receive information, it's very basic information, such as they know it's bigger, they know it somewhat better protects from pests, but none of the farmers we interviewed was actually did actually know about the productivity benefits of these modern structures. So that then leads me to the upscaling strategy, because now that we've completed that pilot trial, the idea is really to work on that, access to information about these benefits. So we started working now with the greenhouse suppliers, as well as other actors, to really see what can we do, how can we help these actors to better inform farmers, specifically the greenhouse suppliers that supposedly have an interest in selling their things. So we're working with them to see how can we best reach out to farmers, how do we package that information for them to have all the information that they need to make that important decision. That will then go hand in hand with a scheme to make it easier for farmers to invest in these greenhouses, because that's the other thing. These greenhouses are a bit more expensive. We know that there's a return to that investment in terms of higher revenues, but with the current crisis and the credit crunch, farmers can't have credits. It's obviously very hard for them to invest in these greenhouses. And so we're also in negotiation with suppliers, with different actors, to see what can we do to make these greenhouses more affordable, and have them come with acceptable terms, such as upfront credit that actually makes it possible for farmers to invest in these greenhouses. And so, yeah, that will be our upscaling strategy, basically. Information plus possibilities to actually finance these greenhouses should hopefully lead to an uptake of these greenhouses, to higher productivity. You see, we're working very long term here, but ultimately that should lead in higher productivity, higher incomes for farmers, safeguarding the jobs of the workers, and maybe ultimately even create new ones as farms expand because they become more profitable. So I'm going to stop here. I think I've used up my 15 minutes, but happy to answer any questions afterwards, of course. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nadia. Perfect timing, of course. So yes, please, participants, if you want already to ask questions and comments, please put them in the chat while we move to the next speaker. Dolce, the floor is yours. You have 15 minutes.
So I hope you can all see my screen. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so welcome everyone, and thank you for the invitation to present my project as well. So I'm Floortje Jacobs. I'm the country manager for Fresh Studio Myanmar, an agricultural consultancy firm. And I will be talking about the Improve Your Food Processing Business Training, which has been developed in collaboration with ILO Myanmar. So in Myanmar, you might have heard that there's a double crisis. So first there was COVID, and then in the beginning of February, there was also a coup during which the military took over power. And this has a major impact on both the political and economical situation in Myanmar. So this has resulted in, for example, international companies leaving Myanmar, but also factories closing, lower demand for higher class products. So many people have lost their jobs in the past months. So we have been brainstorming about where are still the opportunities for people that are looking for income generating activities. So we're looking at like what is there in Myanmar, and agriculture has been the main sector of the country, and it accounts for about 60% of the GDP. So many vegetables, fruits everywhere are produced in Myanmar. Because of safety reasons, there's a need for income generating activities close to home, because people cannot rely on traveling in the country, as often roads are closed or there are checks, or because of COVID, there are measures in place that limit people to travel. And we prefer that low inputs are needed for the activities that they will do. So people have limited access to financial capital and loans, same as in Lebanon. But also we didn't want to come up with something for which high level knowledge is needed. So something very practical. So what we thought of is a training on the key principles of food processing for starting entrepreneurs. And we wanted to focus on micro and small entrepreneurs. So from companies that have 1 to 30 employees. So it can also be like an entrepreneur alone, just wanting to start some income generating activity from their homes, for example. So the business stage is for startups and existing entrepreneurs. And educational level, it was aimed at an average secondary level education, but no specific requirements. And some pre-existing knowledge on traditional processing is preferred, but not necessary. So basically everyone can join that is interested. In Myanmar, we specifically aimed at a number of sectors for which we thought that there's most demand for, but also where there are low entry barriers. So for Myanmar, this is food preservation products, bakery products, some traditional food products, and fresh food production for urban areas. So the solution that we come up with, and that together with ILO Myanmar, is to improve your food processing business training program, which supports food processing entrepreneurs in starting or improving their food processing business. It is developed in Myanmar by us in collaboration with ILO, with funding from NORAD and SECO, and it's consisting of 4 core modules: food product development, really for starting entrepreneurs, but also food safety, food quality, and food processing. It takes methods from world-class factories, so quality control, the 5S method, food safety audits, but makes them simple enough for small entrepreneurs to understand them, but it also provides tools that makes it easy for them to implement for the companies. It's online, but at the same time very practical, so it's not just information sharing, but we really encourage entrepreneurs to put their ideas immediately into action. So there's many exercises where they already do some planning for their own business. It is this 36-hour training for the entrepreneurs and about 40 hours training of trainers. And what we usually do is maximum 4 hours a day because it's an online training, so people are able to maintain their concentration. It's really meant to focus on the key principles of food processing. So it doesn't specifically focus on specific sectors or specific processing methods, but really it helps entrepreneurs to think about the key questions for the business. So for example, how do I design a food product which customers want to buy? How do I make sure food is always of good quality? How do I make sure my food is always safe to eat? How do I organize my production so it is efficient and delivers on time? How do I keep production costs low? How do I access the funds I need to start and run the business with? And how can I make sure my products are sold? So very basic questions, but it really helps entrepreneurs to think through these questions before they actually start planning their business. So these are the 4 core modules: food product development, food quality, food safety, and food processing. And an overarching theme is environmental responsibility. So we really encourage entrepreneurs throughout all modules to also look at the environmental impact of their business. So for example, when they think about labeling and packaging, we also make them aware of that biodegradable packaging is available in Myanmar, for example. The methods, so it's 50% about theory, really technical content, but 50% is practical, which means that we have a lot of case studies with real life existing business examples that the participants know in Myanmar, but also it's packed with exercises, such as planning exercises for control measures that entrepreneurs can immediately start work with, individual exercises where entrepreneurs can focus on their specific product, but also group exercises where they together, for example, make a flow diagram chart based on a common product that's often used. The results, I think it's important to know that the design of the IYFB training draws on ILO's earlier experience in Myanmar by implementing the SCORE training, which is meant for a bit higher skill SME factories, and the Start and Improve Your Business training, also for micro entrepreneurs, but entirely focused on business development. And from their experience, we took many lessons learned in the design of this training and also the delivery of this training. We have a set of detailed manuals that contain explanations of content and exercises from the training packages PowerPoint, but also additional information, tools, and resources that the trainers and entrepreneurs can use if they want to look up more information. The first pilot trainings are done, so the first training of trainers is done, and also the first training of entrepreneurs have started by the trainers themselves. And so far the evaluation is really positive. People feel it's valuable, they learn a lot of new aspects, and they feel it's really valuable in starting their entrepreneurs and make it more successful. Unfortunately, we only recently did these pilot trainings, so we have not the chance yet to really measure at outcome level. So this means we don't know yet to what extent it really helped them in making their businesses more successful. But this is something that we will focus on in the coming months. One success is that the participants and trainers from all over the country joined, including ethnic minorities. which is a major improvement from earlier training programs where we did, and this is all, I think, we believe because of the digital marketing and the online delivery of the training. Before ILO Money, they did the trainings, of course, face-to-face in classrooms, which and mainly in the biggest cities of Myanmar. But we notice now that by online training delivery, people from all over the country join. And in the right box, you see that in general, there's quite a large female participation in this training, which is good. And we see secondary level, but also university degree, so a bit higher level educated participants, and so participation from all regions and states in Myanmar. Then important to note is that it's all being rolled out through a private sector delivery model. So it has scaling potential in that sense. So we train professional trainers that provide trainings as a business. So we train them and then they market the training and they will offer the training to the entrepreneurs and they charge the entrepreneurs a fee for the training. In general, in Myanmar on average, it has been $30 for the whole training, which is quite reasonable for entrepreneurs. They should be able to afford it in general. ILO provides zero subsidy to these trainers, so it's really about them making it a business and delivering it on market-based prices. And so far, the trainers had no issue at all in recruiting entrepreneurs and participants for the trainings. So far, the rollout has been quite quick, actually. So the scaling potential is there. And in Myanmar, we have rolled out the training through the professional business trainers that already have been certified through earlier programs. So in Myanmar, this was quite easy. But in other countries, we believe it should be quite easy as well, because we see the success of the training and the willingness of entrepreneurs to also pay for this training as they see the value for it. We do maintain quality control, even though we roll it out to professional independent trainers, but we find it really important that they go through an official certification process. So there are attendance requirements for them in the TOT. There's a knowledge test. They have to do a pilot training of entrepreneurs for at least 3 entrepreneurs, and they have to get a satisfactory score in their feedback survey. We also have trained master trainers in Myanmar who in turn train the trainers. So we have multiple levels of trainers. So they roll out the training network as well. The exercises in the training are now based on Myanmar, but they're quite easy to adapt to other countries. And there's detailed manuals for trainers in both Myanmar and English language. The success of the training, but also the scaling potential also lies in that it's entirely online, so there's no need to travel, and especially in this COVID times, that makes it very easy to be rolled out. This is just an impression. So as you can see, the PowerPoints that are used during the training are quite simple, not too much text, so everybody can understand them, and lots of illustrations to make it alive and to make people understand the processes that we explain. That's it for my presentation.
Thank you, Floortje. Thank you, Nadia, for both your presentation. I think it's really interesting to put them together, kind of compare and see some common challenges in terms of, the context and the double crisis, but then see how your objectives are completely different, your target group and the support you're also proposing. So I think it's interesting to compare them. And so I wanted to ask Nema to come forward and tell us your impression on the 2 presentations and kind of provide a little bit more.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, ladies, for the inspiring presentations that you have just made, and also for the great work that you're doing in those communities. So a few things struck out for me, and one of them is how the 2 projects addressed access to financial capital. As we all know, one of the major barriers to inclusion in agribusiness is being able to access the funding of the capital that you need to be able to kick off. So to be able to see an approach where in one way you focus on non-capital intensive ways, offering trainings, being able to build up skills so that the participants can now go forward and start their own business, or even train others as a way to earn income themselves. And then on the other side, you look at a program where there's a credit guarantee scheme at the end, where you can be able to qualify and get the support, the financial support that you need to be able to kick off your own program. And that was a great approach. Another thing that stood out for me was the use of training as a way to just propel agribusiness in this sense. Like Nadia mentioned, a lot of information is accessible to many of the people that we want to reach out to, but the missing link is, how do I change the information that I'm receiving into something that I can actually do? For instance, in my work with farmers in Western Kenya, a lot of them would say, we've seen a lot of the big farmers do great things with good seed, with fertilizer. So in their minds, you had to have a tractor to be able to have better farm produce. You had to have like a certain level of income to be able to produce better, because that was the information they were getting, and they weren't able to translate it into how does it fit into my context. So as Nadia said, being able to now pull in the information, but then present it to the beneficiaries in a way that they can actually relate to and see, oh, this is how I don't need to be there, but in the place that I'm at, this is how I can use this information to improve my skill, or to improve my the output I'm getting from my business. And that is something that stuck out for me. Something else that was interesting is to see that as the person implementing the program, you may think that part A is the most integral part, but from the people who are benefiting from it, something else entirely is their most important need. When you look at what, again, in the case of Lebanon, where the farmers were like, yeah, it's great that we have a greenhouse that has better working conditions, but really my greatest need is to be able to know, do I have work tomorrow? Am I going to be able to, is this sustainable? And so I'm just going to throw it out there there's need for greater flexibility and a lot of interaction with our beneficiaries to be able to kind of modify our solutions as we go along, so that we make them more beneficial to the population that we are working with. Something else, which I think is one of my last points, is scalability. In the case of Myanmar and the training that they were rolling out, especially now that it's online and everyone is able to access it, I thought it's a great idea that you have a great base of training for a lot of people, and the fact that these people can then kind of provide that training later. They can move up and become trained as trainers themselves. And speaking from a part of a beneficiary, I went through this, I was able to learn, and now I'm training someone else. I feel like that is a great initiative also to kind of build in a scalability aspect into a program. Because most communities embrace information more when it comes from one of their own. So if I come in and I've benefited from a program and I'm able to go into, for example, a women's group in my community and tell them, oh, this is what I went through and I can teach you how to do this and that. And that creates kind of like a domino effect, and more people get the information and get to build their skill and the output that they have. And apart from the implementation side, I'm going to put on my grant management hat from the donor perspective. Currently, there are a lot of crises happening all over the world, and one challenge that continually faces entrepreneurs and people who are building models to be able to help marginalized communities, or to be able to widen the net so that you can be inclusive of women and refugees. One of the things is, where do I get the funding? The funding pool is decreasing. How am I able to leverage what I have and what I want to do? And something interesting I saw from one of the presentations was that in the case of, I think this was Myanmar, they were able to work together with an already established factory, I think, and they're able to use that kind of like a partnership. So what I would want to throw out there is don't be afraid to seek out connections and partnerships that can be beneficial to your solution. You might have a solution, but you don't need to fix in all the aspects. You think of it like a vehicle. You're in it and you're driving it to destination X. If you can add in 3 more passengers that bring in the skill or the capacity, sometimes even the capital to be able to drive to that direction, then that's a win-win situation all around. So when you're thinking of your pitch, when you're thinking of how am I getting funding, look around in the sector that you want to look around in agribusiness, look around at the location you want to focus on. Who else is doing what you're doing? Because that is also one question that donors come in and they want to find out. Is there someone else doing what you're doing? Then why should we fund you instead of them? Think of it that way and try to already be able to articulate your niche. I have this in addition to what is already on the market. Or sometimes you'd want to go to that organization and say, I've seen your model and I have this idea that can plug into what you have, what you're offering as a solution so that we can scale it up to more people. So just open your mind to be able to think of how the agribusiness space can be more collaborative, especially for the implementing partners that are in it. And I believe that together there's a lot of opportunities that are still open for us along the value chain to be able to plug in and to assist the populations of need. And lastly, if you're looking into a model solution that targets refugees, I would also encourage you to look at the host communities, as in the case of Lebanon. A lot of refugee hosting communities also have needs that kind of run alongside what the refugees are facing. So be able to strike a balance, not just to be able to assist both sides, but also because of the social dynamic that comes with having a refugee population in the host community and having it look like the refugees are getting more support than the host communities, or kind of dispelling the notion of they're taking away what would have come to the host community. So have those nuances in mind. And one of the great ways that both of our presenters today were able to do that is by actually engaging the communities that they ended up working with, talking to them, finding out their pain points, finding out how, if this is a solution, would you be able to do A, B, and C? Then they get that feedback and they're able to develop a solution that is wholesome and is able to propel development forward. So I'm looking forward to looking at your questions, and great job to everyone. And for those who are just jumping into the pool on the agribusiness side, this is one of the most, I would say, rewarding sectors, because you can actually see the difference, not just in terms of added income, but you can see it in terms of improved nutrition for the households. You can see it in terms of kids are going to school more because there's more income. They're able to have their fee paid. They're able to dress better. They're able to be healthier. You can see the intervention kind of just building up the community as a whole. So it's a great sector to be in. There are a lot of opportunities therein, and I urge you to go forth and conquer. Thank you.
Naima, you raised so many points, and there are also a lot of questions in the chat. 15 minutes to discuss a bit. So you raised several points, from adapting financial products, food information, identify the incentive, identify the need of the target group, scalability, ownership, sustainability, also the importance of leveraging other actors in the ecosystem, and finally also the potential tension that we could create by in the problem in the social cohesion by supporting, by targeting one group rather than another. I will ask Nadia and then Florce to quickly comment on this. Choose a couple of topics you want to comment, knowing that you need also to respond to the questions. Nadia, you want to go first?
Sure, okay. Thanks. Well, first of all, apologies. I've been made aware that my presentation didn't show properly and I didn't hear Elisa. I was trying to alert. I hope it was still possible to follow. Sorry about that. But yeah, thanks. I think Nima touched on a couple of very important points here that also resonated with me quite a lot. First of all, the issue of flexibility. And I think we've seen both Myanmar and Lebanon are currently going through this crisis. And I think flexibility is always important, but maybe even more so if you're working in a context where things constantly change. Now, I can't speak for Myanmar, but it was certainly the case in Lebanon, where the situation on the market, the economic situation changes from week to week, and we constantly have to adapt what we do to these changing circumstances. And then there's COVID as well, which, you adapt as well the way you work, right? And you reach out to these communities. For us, it was really important to constantly be in touch with the people that we work in through field visits whenever possible. We also, as mentioned in my presentation, did the surveys where we just asked them, like, what is your situation right now? And to get some data and to really understand what people are going through. And I think that's just really important. Yeah, it's extra hard in the context of COVID when you can't actually plan and you're just going kind of week to week. But it's important. The other thing that resonated with me a lot was that issue that Nima mentioned of creating win-win situations, which I think is so important. First of all, in a refugee context, as Nima mentioned, between the host communities and the refugees. That's why we looked at not just at the refugees and not just at the host communities, but really as farms as an entity that can accommodate kind of both communities. And whatever we do, kind of we check, well, how does that influence the farmers and the workers, the Lebanese and the Syrian communities ultimately. I think these win-win situations also become important in partner choices. A point that Nima also touched upon. Who do you partner with for an upscaling strategy, for instance? For us here, that has been quite tricky because, for instance, if we now want to move and we want to create an outreach strategy to better inform farmers about these benefits of greenhouses, well, kind of your obvious partner would maybe be government extension services. That's what we looked at as well. The Ministry of Agriculture has these extension services. In the current crisis, they don't have budget. They barely have people. The salaries of the employees is also very low, so they're not very motivated to do things. So it's sometimes you need to branch out and be flexible there as well. So currently we're primarily working a lot with the private sector, really, because we're thinking there's a win-win situation there as well. They actually are also struggling and they need help to sell more of their things. Those are also businesses that need support. And so if we can help them inform the farmers better, well, that will ultimately also be beneficial for their businesses if they sell more. So I think looking for these win-win situations is just a very crucial kind of success factors, I would argue.
Thank you, Nadia. Now moving to Flirche, if you want to complement with other topics that she didn't touch in her intervention.
Yeah, maybe to start about the flexibility that is needed to work in these contexts. For us, that was also a big factor while we were designing this training, because we already started before the coup happened. So we were just anticipating on the COVID situation slowly improving and the economy would stabilize, etc. And then the coup happened, and we had already all these plans, and there were major internet cuts and complete chaos in the country for a few months. So it was a bit scary, but in the end, what we found is that people picked their lives up again, internet came back, and people were actually very eager to start new activities and to look for new opportunities. And that was amazing to see. And we could actually, the approach that we took, a fully online training, low cost, very easy to access, was even more relevant than ever after the political situation changed. So that was also, we were lucky, as it were, that we were already on that way. Regarding, I really like Nima's comment on in challenging situations, you really still have to look for solutions. Like, it's hard to find funding, and you don't want to start activities that always rely on funding. So for us, that was really important. We had funding to design and pilot the training. But for us, the ultimate goal was to make it something that would scale by itself. So really encouraging trainers in the country and encouraging entrepreneurs that might become trainers to join the training and then start selling, make sure that the training is interesting enough for them to start selling it in the market, and also helping them with that. So we also encourage them to use Facebook to do digital marketing. We also help them with that. And we really believe that this training will continue to exist even without our involvement in a year or so. So I think that's really important for us. And I also liked your comment that I really relate to is to make something really relatable to the target group. So we can come up with all these theories about difficult scientific theories about food safety and how the microorganisms work and how they expand, but it's really about how can the entrepreneurs use this in practice, like how will they change their business in a concrete way, and how can we already help them during the training. So not only transferring information, but already doing a lot of exercises where they have to think it through for themselves, so they will not shut their laptops at the end of the day and then forget about it immediately, but so that they immediately have plans that they can actually apply. So I think that was really important for us as well. I think, yeah, that's my comment here now.
Thank you, Floortje. I will now move to the question from the audience. We still have 10 minutes, a bit less than 10 minutes. One from Nada to Nadia. Have you looked into the waste in the waste value chain, along the value chain, waste part of the value chain, and can you tell a bit something about volume and cost of this part of the value chain?
Yeah, I think Nada obviously knows the Lebanese market and the value chain, because yes, there's a lot of food waste and we've looked into that. It's a tricky issue because there's a lot of issues that we could tackle. We needed to prioritize also kind of what, in terms of what gives the highest benefit for the people that we're doing this for. Food waste, I think, has always been a problem in the value chain because of the dominance of the wholesale market, and there's a lot of speculation. So they move things around to sometimes also decrease prices, so they have to pay the farmer less. They can call in trucks from Syria, actually, truckloads of tomatoes that are then dumped on the market to depress the price. There's a lot of playing around like this. The thing is, it's become way worse with the crisis because markets are not functioning perfectly anymore because of the fuel issue and the electricity issue. So we don't always have electricity. There's barely ever been state electricity, but even electricity generated by generators is not always there because of a lack of diesel fuel needed for the generators. So cold chains break down, which obviously leads to food waste. Whenever there's no fuel, transportation systems break down, which then again leads to food waste, because you can have a situation where there's an oversupply in the north of the country, and yet here in Beirut, we can't find fresh tomatoes or something. So that can exist simply because transportation systems break down. And so these are all issues that I guess, unfortunately, go beyond what we can do currently as a project. No, they're deeper structural issues that hopefully at some point will be solved. It's an issue that we're monitoring for sure. But again, yeah, there's a lot of issues that we're trying to work a little bit on the wholesale market dominance issue, but it's also very much influenced kind of by culture and by historical structures and power relationships that are hard to change. But it's definitely an interesting thing that we're monitoring and trying to work on. Yeah.
Thank you, Nadia. Next one for Floortje, I'm actually merging two because they're both related to financial sustainability. One is from Merton. SOYB has been implemented with a strong commercial viability focus in Myanmar. Can you say a bit more about what sort of assessment were done to establish payment capacity of entrepreneurs, if any? And then from Esther, again, could you kindly share how the trainers financially sustain their trainings? Are entrepreneurs paying or it's funded?
Yes. Yep. So No, it's not funded. So the entrepreneurs pay for the trainings. The first training of trainers was funded, but now the first entrepreneurs that took the training already paid for the training. And we found this really important that we make a financially sustainable model for the trainers as well and make it attractive for them to continue to deliver these trainings. In response to Merten, I have to say we did not do a very detailed assessment of payment capacity of the entrepreneurs, but in the beginning we did some focus group discussions. More in general, we discussed the topics that they were interested in, what kind of training they were interested in, and we briefly also touched upon if they were willing to pay, and if so, how much. And we had a rough indication. But also we learned a lot from SIYB, the Start and Improve Your Business training that already was rolled out before us, and which was very similar setup, a very similar target audience. So we knew already a bit what entrepreneurs were willing to pay and if trainers would be interested in that. And now we're actually, with the first trainers delivering the trainings to entrepreneurs, we see that they're charging different prices, but on average it's about $30 to $80, which is affordable for the entrepreneurs. There's many participants signing up. So it's also a bit of a trial and error on what is still feasible within the current market, but it seems to work, and the business model seems to work for the trainers as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Floortje. I wanted to ask a question myself to both of you, kind of comparing both experiences. It's kind of the inevitable pandemic/crisis question. I will not ask you how you have kind of adapted to that, because I feel it was almost a starting point for both of you on designing how to respond to that crisis. What I wanted to ask you, related also to the importance highlighted by Nema of kind of mobilizing the ecosystem. What else is out there? What are the other actors doing? Can you tell us a bit about how the other actors have responded to that crisis? Do you see any emerging opportunity of collaboration, of way of working of those actors that you can leverage on for your project? May I start with Nadia?
Yeah, so I should probably start by saying that it was weird for us here in Lebanon, the COVID situation, because it was kind of a big issue in the beginning, but then as the economic crisis spiraled out of control, frankly, people didn't think about COVID very much anymore because they were busy, feeding their families, kind of trying to. So it wasn't a huge, it seems for the population, it was not their primary issue anymore. Obviously, as you said, we needed to adapt to that as a program as well. For me specifically, it was weird because I arrived here in March 2020, 2 weeks before the lockdown. I didn't actually meet partners that I was supposed to work with in person for about a year into the project. So we did all that obviously online and so forth. I think working in agriculture made it a little bit easier because that was always somewhat exempted. Just farmers kept working, obviously, because they need to. You can't not plant things and not harvest things. So that was always a little bit outside that COVID bubble, I would say. Yeah. No, I don't have nothing super innovative. Maybe Floortje has more to say on that topic.
What we did, we not only train the entrepreneurs, but we also linked them to potential input and service providers that could be helpful for the business. So we developed a whole database of food safety certification organizations, bakery equipment providers, really a wide scope of any suppliers that could be interesting to the entrepreneurs to really help them start. And actually these equipment providers were also still in business, also looking for new demand, as it were, because we're all in this crisis, and that has been quite appreciated by both the trainers and the entrepreneurs. And you see that they now start Facebook groups all together, the input and service providers, the trainers, the entrepreneurs, where they link and they ask questions, and then some can help each other. So we really try to make use of the online ecosystem in this situation, and that has turned out quite successful so far. So.
We have to close here. The time is up. Thank you all for your participation. Thank you for your interesting presentation and to participants for their questions. Please join us in 15 minutes for the closing session. Goodbye. Thank you all.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you for joining. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.